Nintendo's financials are out for the March quarter. Let's take a look and see if it's rosy skies ahead or all doom and gloom. All right, so let's jump in with the biggest part of this news, which is Nintendo has hit their projections. They were aiming for 19 million units of hardware sold and 48 million of software, and they've made it to 48.71. So it's safe to say, as of today, they're above 50 million software sales, and they'd be over 20 million today because as of March 31st, they were sitting at 19.86. The Nintendo Switch continues to chug along, but it might not make it to PS2's revised 160 million sold. We'll discuss that because Nintendo have outlined projections for the next 12 months. Moving over to software sales, Mario Kart World is selling very well. Basically, 75% of Nintendo Switch 2 owners own Mario Kart World. Now, that is largely due to the game being bundled with the system. Donkey Kong Bonanza is at 4.5 million. Pokemon Legends ZA just under 4. Didn't really sell last quarter, which I'll discuss in a second. Pokemon Pocopia's figures are a bit of a question mark here. We'll get into that more later. Nintendo's official figures as of the 31st of March are 2.41 million, and Kirby Air Riders is at 1.87. The most notable thing here is they've always shown games once they get to 1 million sold. So that basically does state that on Nintendo Switch 2, Metroid Prime 4 has not sold 1 million units. It has been announced that Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment has sold 1 million, but not officially, according to Nintendo. So I'm not sure what's happening there. But it also, with what I discussed in my last video, Mario Tennis Fever is not selling well. And evidence of this is after 6 to 7 weeks on the market, it has not made it to 1 million sold. It might over the rest of the year, but it is a very slow start for that game. The big news in the Switch software sales is that Animal Crossing New Horizons is closing in on unbelievably 50 million sold. It just needs 100,000 to go, and I would assume that it will cross that threshold some point this year, especially with the Nintendo Switch 2 version. A lot of people would probably be more inclined to buy the Switch 1 version and get the upgrade rather than just solely buying the Switch 2 version. So we shall see there. Nothing else overly of note that stands out in terms of the change from last quarter to this, but these are the top 10 sellers on Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch 2's Mario Kart World wouldn't even make the top 10, might not even make the top 15, to be honest, on Nintendo Switch. That's just how well some of these games have sold. I made this little spreadsheet just to show the change from one quarter to the next, and Nintendo Switch 2 sold just over 10 million units of software last quarter and just around 2.5 million units of hardware. The big thing here is I'm of the belief those figures in terms of software sales that we've just discussed are maybe either wrong or inflated, or maybe Pokemon Legends ZA really just sold a lot in that initial burst when it released, and then everyone that was going to buy it has bought it, and you move on. But only, according to Nintendo, 50,000 units of Pokemon Legends ZA sold for the entirety of January, February, and March, which seems somewhat unlikely. I have put here in this spreadsheet that Hyrule Warriors and Metroid Prime 4 have sold 1 million, but that I believe Metroid Prime 4 has sold 1 million across both Switch 1 and Switch 2. And it was a story in January that Hyrule Warriors had passed 1 million units, but they're just not officially stated on the financials. So the other little pieces of information to go through is that as of the September 1st, the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 is going up. In Australia, where I am, the regular retail price is going from $700 to $770. A bit of a jump. So essentially, currently, right now, $770 is the price of Mario Kart World and the Nintendo Switch 2. Moving forward, you will only get the Nintendo Switch 2 for that price, and the same goes in places like the United States. Looking at other little bits of information that is somewhat interesting, Nintendo is projecting a further 16.5 million units of hardware and 60 million of software for the Switch 2 next financial year for them. So this time next year, we'll know if Nintendo have sold 108 million units of software and about 36.5 million units of hardware. That's the projections, even taking into account the price increase that is coming later in the year. So that is interesting. The hardware is expected to only sell 2 million on the Nintendo Switch, so that would only get it around 158 million 12 months from now. So it would take maybe 2 or 3 years at that pace probably to pass PlayStation 2's record of 160 million. So because you have to assume that for the 2028 financial year, it's not going to be 2 million units. It might be 1.5 or 1. So the Nintendo Switch is coming to the end, and it's probably likely that they're not going to be bringing many units of software across. They are projecting still 100 million units of software to sell, but it is a decrease year on year, so they're going to be less inclined to bring games to the system. Other bits of information that I find just a little bit interesting. Nintendo have stated that over 4 million units have sold of Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Pokemon Pocopia. So I'm not sure why Nintendo stated as of the 31st of March that Pocopia sold 2.41 million units, because that was the first 3 weeks of release. That would weirdly mean that basically the first 2 weeks of April, Pocopia suddenly sold 1.5 million copies or more. And that doesn't make sense. So I do believe that 2.41 figure is incorrect. That could have something to do with the fact that it does state here that in Japan, the software is sold and released by the Pokemon company. But, and so maybe that's why, maybe the 1 million copies of Pocopia that have sold aren't being included in that figure. But that's maybe my only thought on that. I just find that odd. These are the titles that have been announced as of today and that are still to come out. It does sort of let you know that Nintendo's really trying to push a few games out to try and get people over the line before that price increase does hit in September. I do speculate that Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave now will come out in August. I would assume probably to give it some space after Splatoon Raiders, so probably in that sort of second or last week of August, hopefully to facilitate sales before that price increase. Winds and Waves is still slated for 2027. It's just a question of when. Is it going to be early part of the year or late part of the year? I think there'll be a bit of a push and pull. I am expecting 3D Mario to come out next year, so maybe 3D Mario comes out in the first half, Winds and Waves in sort of that November slot that typically new generation Pokemon titles release, but we'll just have to wait and see. These games are already out or coming to the Nintendo Switch, so really Rhythm Heaven Groove might be the last Nintendo Switch game. We really haven't seen much of it. but it is out July 2nd. And unbelievably, I did not think this game would sell very well, but Tomadachi Life Living the Dream has sold 3.8 million units in 2 weeks, so it's been a big hit. If we go back to the top-selling titles on the Nintendo 3DS, the last Tomadachi Life sold 6.73 million units on the Nintendo 3DS. I just didn't expect that would translate to the Nintendo Switch, especially being 10 years on, and also the fact that Mii's have kind of gone. But, yeah, big hit is Tomodachi Life. Arguably, once 5 weeks have passed, it'd probably outsell Pokemon Pocopia as well, which is really impressive for this game. Third-party titles, it's just important to look at these because these are the games that Nintendo are really optimistic of, that they would put them in their sort of financial briefings packet. Games that I've already played and have a review coming for is Pragmata. I played a bit of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on Game Pass a few years ago. Didn't love it, but, you know, it's still a big game coming to the system. eFootball, I'm surprised that they'd have here, but the fact that it's going to be a cheaper title from Konami, it could sell quite a few units. Adventures of Elliot, I'm excited for. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I just don't know when I'm going to find the time for. I'm very disappointed at the delay for 007 First Light, but it is still slated to come probably in the next 3 months. Orbitals is going to be, I think, a very, very good game. Village in the Shade, I have absolutely no idea what that game is, so I'm going to have a bit of a look into that after recording this. And Professor Layton was initially projected to come probably about 18 months ago, but will come later this year, and I think it will be a pretty good return to form considering how long the development process of this game has been. Sort of finally, the big news that they just wanted to cover also is that the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which released back on April 1st, has passed $800 million in just April, which is kind of crazy stuff. The overall Mario movie series has passed $2 billion at the box office, which is pretty darn impressive. So the other just little things to look at before I let you go is just seeing the breakdown of hardware in different areas. So 5.6 million in Japan, the Americas 6.7 million, across Europe 4.4 million Nintendo Switch 2s have sold, and other 3 million, so that includes somewhere like Australia. And also just the last little piece of information, it just shows that Super Mario Galaxy 2 has sold 2.76 million units, and Super Mario Galaxy has sold 2.6, and that released back in October, which is pretty impressive. Super Mario Party Jamboree is closing in on 10 million units sold, and Pokemon Legends ZA has sold 8.85 million units on Nintendo Switch. So to couple that with the just under 4 million on Nintendo Switch 2, it's sold 12.8 million units. So Pokemon continues to sell very, very well. And another piece that I find very interesting is that, let's just quickly go back to this. In 10th position is New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe with 18.96 million units sold. Here it states that Nintendo Switch Sports has sold 18.32 million units, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder 17.44 million. So I think Super Mario Bros. Wonder is probably best positioned to sort of knock its predecessor off the top 10, so look out for that in future quarters, especially now that there is the Switch 2 edition for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I think a lot of people will probably find a way to get the game first on Switch 1 and then buy the upgrade pack, rather than just buying the Switch 2 edition. And there you have it. The last thing, basically, Nintendo just has a list of all the games released on Nintendo Switch 2 by themselves to this point. So there you have it. Let me know what you think. The big news in many people's eyes is going to be that there is a price increase coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 as of September 1st. So be sure to buy yours now if you haven't already. My name is Dazza. Thank you very much for watching along. Be sure to like and subscribe, and have yourself a fantastic day.